Welcome aboard! We will be your guides during this magical journey into the movies. It's the perfect job for us because we love the movies. It's showtime! Ready when you are, CB!
Action!
Welcome to Monoreel Radio, episode number 318. I'm Sean.
And I'm Jackie.
I am so excited. I am so excited.
Oh, here it comes.
What the February has returned. But I kind of think I let you off easy with the first one.
You lobbed me a softball giving me Marvel on the first one.
I mean, it's only going to get worse from here.
I know. I feel like I'm going to be punished for this later on. I know the idea was to ease me in slowly here, but I feel like there is going to be retribution by the end of this month.
Yeah, well, we are talking about 2020's The New Mutants, which was supposed to be 2019's The New Mutants, which was supposed to be 2018's The New Mutants. And so I remember in 2017 seeing the trailer for this in theaters. I cannot remember what movie we were seeing, but I remember seeing this trailer, and I thought, oh my god, this looks incredible.
To put this in perspective of how many times this film got delayed, this was a 2020 release, and this was Stan Lee's last executive producer credit with Marvel, and he passed in 2018, which vividly stands out in my mind because we were in Disneyland. You were on Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout when it happened. So that's how long this was delayed.
And there's so many reasons for it, right? And that's why I wanted to put it in What the February, because it's like, what the February happened here? There's a lot to discuss. Before we get into plot and all that, let's give a little backstory of exactly what happened. Film gets shot in 2017. We get our first trailer that year. Trailer looks awesome. It's being produced under Marvel Studios, or in association with Marvel Studios, which Disney owned at the time, so it works as being a member of the MCU, and it categorizes itself for Monoreel Radio. What was happening behind the scenes was 20th Century Fox was releasing the film. Disney had not yet bought Fox. Disney buys Fox. Disney sees the first cut of the movie. They hate it. They have to go back to the drawing board. They have to schedule reshoots. They cut it up. They don't like it. They go back to the original premise. Disney doesn't like it. They're going to reshoot. But now the problem is our cast has gotten too old for reshoots.
And it's a teenage cast, so it's noticeably different that they are older.
So then we're going to recut again. But then the editor that was supposed to edit the film had picked up another project and moved on, so they had to hire another editor. And then COVID happens. So the most reasonable thing to do was, I think Disney was never really happy with any cuts of this film. So let's release it to theaters in August of 2020. That way it gets its release. Nobody's going to the movies. We can wipe our hands of it and we can make it go away. I have never, until Snow White, which is the box office bomb in the making, I can't remember a film that was so anticipated, so controversial, and so buried in my life.
I mean, I appreciate that they at least got it over the finish line, and they're not doing what has become common practice now of just scrapping films that they've shot and cut as tax write-offs.
Right, or write-downs or whatever. But was this film the disaster that so many people said that it was? Should it have gotten a full director's cut? And do we wish we had more of the New Mutants. That, on top of many other things, is what we are here to discuss today.
This episode is sponsored by Fierce Fox Co., designers of handmade silkscreen shirts. Fierce Fox has a t-shirt, tank top, hoodie, or crew neck for every fandom. So whether it's the movies or theme parks, princesses or villains, the MCU or Star Wars, everyone will find something they love. The designs range from subtle quotes from our favorite films to iconic characters we can wear proudly in so many different styles, such as sketchbook and concert tees. Listeners of Monoreel Radio can get a 20% discount using the code Monoreel at checkout. Visit fiercefoxco.com to check out all of the collections.
After her reservation is destroyed by a tornado, Danny Moonstar wakes up in a hospital under the care of Dr. Cecilia Reyes. Dr. Reyes explains that Danny was the sole survivor as she is a mutant, and that they don't yet know what her powers are. So she must stay in the hospital along with other teenagers learning to harness their powers. Danny meets Sam, Ileana, Bobby, and Rain, and we learn that Dr. Reyes is also a mutant, and these 5 were chosen as they experienced or caused devastating tragedies, though the facility that they're in feels more like a jail than an actual hospital. We learn that Sam can fly at jet speed, but accidentally collapsed a coal mine, killing his father. Bobby can manipulate solar power, but burned his girlfriend alive. Ileana can pull up an interdimensional sorcery, but was abused as an enslaved child. And Rain came from a devout Catholic village and can transform into a wolf and killed a priest to escape. There is a lot going on here, tonally very different from a lot of the other Marvel things that we've seen. The other teens begin to be tortured by visions of their past while Danny becomes chemically unstable. Dr. Reyes collects blood samples to determine Danny's powers, as she is unable to determine what her powers actually are, at least on surface level. Reyes notices Rain and Danny getting close and encourages her to continue that relationship, which eventually turns romantic. The teens, specifically Sam, grow increasingly frustrated with Reyes, but they all start to grow closer as friends. Reyes tightens the screws on the group as she sees that she is losing control over them. However, Danny and Ileana continue to butt heads, as Ileana suspects that Danny's powers is that she gets into the heads of others. Dr. Reyes receives notification from her superiors at the Essex Corporation that Danny is extremely dangerous and needs to be terminated. Danny tells Rain that she had a vision of a horrible place where they will go after they leave the quote-unquote hospital, casting further doubt on Reyes. Reyes takes more blood samples from Danny and tells her that she is going to put her to sleep as she cannot be controlled. The others, meanwhile, fight off smiley faces from Ileana's limbo. Reyes leaves them to fend for themselves after Rain claws Reyes and saves Danny. They learn the Essex Corporation isn't training them to be X-Men, which is kind of what they thought was happening the entire time, but instead to be killers. So they decide to fight back and kill Reyes. Reyes traps them in a force field and begins to choke out Danny, but this unleashes a demon bear from inside of Danny that eats Reyes. The bear returns to hunt Danny, who has fallen unconscious. Ileana fights off the bear, flying in and out of limbo. Danny tries to escape her subconscious as Rain, Sam, and Bobby join the fight against the bear. Danny sees a vision of her father, who tells her that she is bigger than the bear, which was a story that he used to tell her. It was an old folk tale he used to tell her before he had passed away. So she awakens to confront the demon. Rather than kill the bear, Danny learns to harness and control it. With Reyes dead, the force field that had previously been around the hospital is gone, so the group leaves to pursue freedom together. Hour and 36-minute runtime, which is a welcome surprise in the MCU, because we've gotten so used to these films that run 2 hours and 15 minutes, 2.5 hours, close to 3 hours in some cases. So as I read this out loud, this feels like an hour and 36 minutes. It also feels a little jagged and all over the place. So while the runtime is welcome, you can see where the film was hacked apart.
It felt like there was something missing. Yeah, I didn't want to give away too much of my final review up front, but I think just for the purposes of this film, these are like top line notes because we're just going to keep coming back to this. You know, Sean and I really try not to talk about these films before we turn the mics on so that we can have the most natural discussion possible. But there was one thing that I had said to you, and it was before I knew about all of the distribution nightmares that were happening, getting this movie, you know, to the picture lock stage,
right,
and getting it out into theaters. I had said to you, this feels like it could be a teen slasher flick. In particular, there are several moments that reminded me of Nightmare on Elm Street, and I wish that they had gone darker with them. And that was when you told me that it changed hands, it changed editors. Disney said no, no, no. But I really wish that they had gone for a genre flip here, especially because you're focused on teens. It would have made such a great horror film, especially because you have this taking place in one location. It would have felt it does feel very closed in and claustrophobic, but that would have really lent to the genre. And you could have played with that and made it more of a thriller too, like a Panic Room kind of a thing. And I really wish that they had leaned into it more because there is a good movie in here somewhere.
Oh, I absolutely agree. This was supposed to be a straight horror. It was supposed to be Marvel's first jump into horror. It ended up being Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness, because this was hacked up so badly that a lot of the horror elements were removed. And, you know, there is some light nudity in the movie, which there's the shower scene with Danny and with Rain.
That was a straight nod to Carrie.
It was, and there's a little revealing on Danny, slightly, but the only reason why they had to leave that in was because of the witch brand that Rain had. Because if you don't have that, you lose her entire storyline. I feel like if that was not such an important part of the movie, I think even that would have been cut out.
Absolutely.
I think that there's so much here that got left on the cutting room floor, and it is sort of frustrating. But let's talk about what wasn't cut out.
Yeah, we've gotten completely ahead of ourselves.
No, but I agree with you. I think it's necessary to sort of get that out of the way now, because a lot of the criticism that we're going to have, it's not, in my opinion, it's not a knock at the screenwriting. It's not a knock at the directing. It's not a knock at the performances. And I'm glad you said it. There's a good movie in here somewhere. Something that I did sort of, I didn't jive with the first viewing or even in the second viewing, and it turns out that, you know, this whole thing ended up being BS anyway. The whole tornado thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've seen tornadoes in tons of films. It's why Twisters came out last year. So we know what to see in a tornado. Danny's reservation being destroyed, there's already fires set when she is awoken by her father. There's already buildings destroyed. It looks like they were attacked. It turns out, of course, that's what it actually was. I'm wondering if there was more there that we didn't see, because her father's death is absolutely brutal. And I feel like we were to know that this wasn't a tornado, but that's a seed that Reyes planted. I think that we were not supposed to trust Reyes from the start.
Which I didn't. But honestly, the first time that I watched this, I was so confused as to what was happening. I wasn't even waiting for the second viewing to sit there with my notepad. I went back and replayed this, I kid you not, 5 times because I couldn't tell what was happening. First of all, very dark. And I don't mean content-wise. I mean, the cinematography is very, very dark. And that, I feel like that happens a lot, especially in recent history and especially with these Marvel films. It looks brighter on a theatrical scene and it doesn't always translate over to streaming, which could be the streaming. It could be television settings. my television settings are perfect. But no, it could just be that you and I don't love this, that you have to adjust your settings for each type of film. But when I first sat down to watch it, it was just so unclear what was happening. I couldn't tell if the setting was like an army base or a trailer park. And, you know, the dad gets Danny to safety and he's like, I gotta go back. And I'm like, for whom? Like, do you have other kids in the house? Is it your family? Like, no idea what is happening. And that's not made clear until Danny's first scene with the doctor, where she says it was a tornado on the reservation. And I was like, oh, okay, that would have been really nice to see, especially because if you're going to tell a story about a Native American character, why are we not seeing that? Like, that should have been a huge build. And instead, my guess is that had to do with reshoots, or that you couldn't reshoot, because instead it opens with the voiceover, which very much feels like a Band-Aid over a bullet wound. Before we get into Danny waking up in the hospital, you said that the father's death was brutal. Is that the body that we're seeing? Because we do see a body get flung back, but like it's so mutilated, like you can't even tell if it's the father. And I went back and watched a couple of times. I was trying to match. He's in a black jacket and it looks like the body that gets thrown is in plaid.
I think the jacket was torn off. No, that is supposed to
So
be
she
him.
did watch her father get killed. Okay. And then it's also unclear because Danny's a mutant, so theoretically she can regenerate. So if she's killed, it's kind of unclear if it's the fall that she took or if she got attacked, because we don't know how long this passage of time is, how long she's been in the hospital, if she's been regenerating for weeks. I will say, great cut though between her lying in the woods to waking up in the hospital bed. That's actually, I don't know which editor that was, if it was the first or second, but it was really well done.
It was well done, and I do like the introduction that we get to Reyes. She does explain that it was a tornado, of course, and I'm sitting here going, that's the worst tornado I've ever seen in film. You know, I never really trusted her. Which I think was the point.
Agreed.
You could tell there's something off with her, but I think we were supposed to be in on it a little bit more.
Well, the fact that Danny wakes up in handcuffs, right? You immediately don't trust where she is. But I like that because it's a little moment of character development for her where she's not waiting to find out where she is. She's dragging that bed around even though she is chained to it. So I like that they planted that she's a little spunky up front. But yeah, you're immediately not supposed to trust Reyes.
I don't mind that she's handcuffed to the bed because this, at the end of the day, is supposed to be an origin story. Think about the origin stories of other superheroes that we've seen, you know, like Captain America. He doesn't know exactly what his powers are going to be. He can't really harness them. I specifically think about when he realizes that he's not in a real hospital and he breaks out and he's in Times Square in modern day. Think about any Superman origin film where you see him get his powers for the first time. Spider-Man, same thing. So, like, that makes sense to me. And it makes sense to me that if ultimately, before we know exactly where this is going, if ultimately she's going to be kept here to be monitored to eventually become a member of the X-Men, which is what I think everybody thought this was going to be because this was supposed to be dipping the toe into X-Men.
Right.
Like, all of that makes sense. I do like how we get introduced to the rest of the cast, though. I like how once Danny is brought in, you know, they're all in that sort of group. It's almost like they're doing group therapy together.
Right. And this sort of buys back a little bit of trust with Reyes, too, because especially compounded with Danny not knowing what her powers are, you're like, okay, maybe she is trying to help them and push it forward.
I immediately love the conflict and the interaction that she has with Ileana. because the rest of them are sort of just there. Bobby's a bit of a wise guy. Sam's the aw shucks. Rain, she's a little gentle, a little shy, a little quiet. But the conflict with Ileana is palpable from the start and doesn't feel forced.
It really is, because with these teen movies, you are going to get a lot of archetypes. So where Ileana could have and should have been set up as the mean girl, and she goes straight villain, especially because she's pretty racist. And that's where I feel like it was really a disservice to gloss over the fact that we had a Native American character, because we don't really get to see anything else other than the bear totem that Danny's father made for her. We really don't get to see anything else about her culture. It doesn't do anything to inform her character. They only use it so that Ileana can take these digs throughout the film. So that was a big miss. I wish that they had delved deeper into that much more.
But I feel like they did. The way that the film ends with harnessing the bear and, that the Native American culture being so in touch with nature. I think the fact that they knew to end the film on that note tells me that this was probably a bigger part of something else that ended up just getting scrapped, either for runtime or for horror or for suggestiveness. I don't know what it is, but there's enough working here, and they thought enough to do it at the end. I don't think they tripped and fell into a symbolic ending. I feel like it was here the entire time. But to your point, we just didn't see it.
Well, no, you're right. That was very intentional, because anytime I've heard the adage about the two bears, which one do you feed, the evil or the good? It's been two wolves. So I think that was very intentional to make the change to a bear.
And they would change to a bear because Rain becomes a wolf. So you're not going to have it just be wolf with wolf with wolf.
Can't have two wolves.
Right, exactly. But the way that Ileana manipulates her, tells her that she can escape. Oh yeah, there's no fence here, and she runs face first into the force field. And the fact that I love the fact that Danny could just as easily have been embarrassed, insulted, and sort of sulked away. But instead, her initial reaction is, screw you, I'm going to fight back. The conflict between the two is just fantastic.
I also love the juxtaposition of Ileana is such a bully to her, but she's the one that's talking to a sock puppet, because we don't know what Loki is yet.
Yeah, Lockheed.
Lockheed.
Sounds like Loki because she's got that Russian accent. I think it's Russian. But it's Lockheed is the name of the little dragon.
Okay, because she's saying it like Loki.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I thought it was Loki, and that confused me too, because I was like, wait, we have two of them in this universe, but that makes much more sense now.
Yeah, it's a good accent though, because the actress is from Miami. Okay, let's talk about Rain and Danny and how their relationship starts to build. Let's just call it what it is, folks. There's a lot of dark elements in this movie, intentionally. And I think that had this not been such a huge moment, this would have been the one that gets cut out. Rain builds the relationship with Danny because she prevents... This is just what it is, okay? It's triggering, but it's what it is. She prevents Danny's suicide attempt. Because Danny has climbed to the top of a tower and is going to jump.
Because it's not just that she witnessed her father's death. Now Reyes keeps hitting it home. Your whole reservation's gone. You have no one.
You're
alone in
we
this
don't know
world.
what you are.
Yeah, and she just figures, okay, well, I'm done. Like it's almost like that Deadpool or Groundhog Day thing, because I also think she knows she just wants out in the moment, but I think somewhere she knows that she's going to come back.
And Reyes,
I think she at least wants to try because she's just done.
And Reyes is like, well, it's survivor's guilt. It's common. Like that, she kind of just writes it off.
Yeah.
But I think that it's this incredible moment because you don't know a lot about Rain quite yet, but you get so much of her character in that moment. It's not just the caring nature of her. It's not just the fact that she's the one that's willing to really put time into getting to know Danny. It's the fact that you learn so much about who she is as a character, what her Catholic background meant to her, and that's such a thing with her. And obviously when we find out what she did to escape her village, it obviously pushes it over the top. But you needed to soften the tone, and you needed the bridge to be built somewhere. And I think this was a really good spot to do it.
I also love that it wasn't just, no, don't jump.
Yeah.
Obviously you want to save her, but it was the way that she calmly talks her down. I've been where you are. I know how you feel. There's another day. Things will get better. And she levels with her.
Right. And then you get the, as I mentioned before, suggestive shower scene where they're both in the shower together. This is before anything...
Because they've also been like a little flirty at this point. Like there's been some glances at each other. So this is like completely new territory for Disney.
And they are supposed to be, at least Danny, is supposed to be 16 years old.
Right.
So we're talking about a minor here. And you get the look at, I believe it's Rain's right shoulder. She's got the branding with the W. We don't know exactly what that is yet. But, Danny says to her, a tattoo wasn't enough. You had to go and do more. And she goes, well, it wasn't my choice. And, Rain turns the shower off, wraps herself in the towel, and leaves Danny by herself. I think it does a great job of further unwrapping what Rain is. Because now at this point, it's like, Rain's been the really sweet kid that's taking the time. This is before we've had the bonding moment. But then you're like, well, what's her deal? It's something, now you're starting to cast doubt on Rain. You don't know if she's exactly what she's setting herself up to be either.
Right, because she's totally been that like motherly, nurturing character up to this point. So there's a lot boiling under the surface. I also like that they didn't shy away from the fact that, like I said, they've been sort of flirty at this point. They didn't shy away from the fact that like Danny is obviously looking at her body, and the characters are not bothering with modesty. And to me, that's how you do it. If you're going to bother to introduce an LGBTQ character, then go for it. Don't dance around that. And I appreciate that this movie does not do that at all.
What happens next is you have another scene where the five of them are together, and immediately it's Danny and Ileana that are getting back into it, and Ileana summons her sword. I don't know what else to say. She summons her sword.
It's like her
it's like
arm.
A whole
it like
body
transforms into a Bucky arm with a sword attached at the end of it. It's pretty cool, actually. Like where the CGI fails in this movie, that's like the one aspect that's pretty well done.
See, and I think that the CGI throughout is really good.
Really?
Yes. I think the CGI, and you know why? Because Marvel, you want to know why? Because Marvel CGI sucks so bad once Disney bought it, that this was still Fox, so they were still putting money into special effects. So I think if there are moments where it fails, to me they look great, because I'm so used to the horrific special effects that Disney puts out now, that it even if it's bad, it looks good. But I don't know, I thought it was good throughout the whole film, but you're right, this armor in particular was awesome.
Yeah, no, I think that looked great. I don't think Rain's wolf looked great. I don't think the burn victim with Roberto looked great. I think Ileana's demons looked great. I'll give you that one for sure.
But this is one of the first times that you've seen Reyes use her power. We've actually seen the force field, but we haven't seen Reyes up to this point actually put a force field up. She does it to prevent Ileana from striking Danny. So now, what's interesting is it's not a force field that's there because it's something that's been built. You now know that this is a force field around the perimeter that Reyes has put in here.
Right.
But it's smart because the horrible act of trapping them is hidden but in the act of saving Danny. So what happens now is they both get tossed into solitary confinement, which in and of itself is horrible. But what happens when they get into solitary confinement is actually spectacular. You have them in 2 separate rooms, side by side. This is Danny and Ileana. And Danny, against all logic through concrete walls, which is a miss, 100% is a miss.
Yeah, I get why we had to hear what's going on the other side of the wall, but the wall is not, in fact, made of paper.
Right. You can hear her talking to Lockheed.
Yeah.
And talking about, we can go to our special place, nobody can get us there. And so it's great because there's an innocence and an exposure to a very soft character that puts a hard shell on when she's talking to this sock puppet. It's before we know exactly what she has been through. So all of a sudden, you find out just in that moment that this is a very layered character, more to her than we expected.
Right. This is where you see Ileana going from the trope of a bully that's taking out all of her issues on everyone else and leveling her into this scared little girl who is clearly not able to process her trauma, that she needs to mentally escape somewhere else. They dip their toe in as far as her talking to the puppet the entire time, but this is where they really start to crack her open.
Yeah, because you get a quick, and it's not her flashback, it's the flashback that we see as the audience of her as a child hiding underneath her covers right before abuse is about to happen.
Okay. Is it the audience POV or is this Danny's POV? Because I didn't think so. The first time, again, very jarring, very confusing because they have clearly cut some things out. And this was my first reaction to, oh, she's dreaming. This feels like Nightmare on Elm Street. Give me more of this. Like, let's really see like the torment here of what's happening when she's asleep. And that's when I thought we were in the audience POV. On second viewing, when I learned that Danny is feeding her bear negative energy, I was like, oh, Danny's in close proximity to her. Is Danny doing this?
I'm not sure. I thought we were just getting an audience POV. But what does start to happen here is it's the first time that we see Reyes in her lab watching surveillance cameras, and she is starting to test levels on Danny, and you start to see how completely unstable Danny is, how they cannot determine what the mutation is, and that further tests are required.
The only thing that I don't love about this is from here forward, I feel like there's such a tonal shift with Danny's character, and this is where it really feels like a lot is missing. She's not very trusting up front, and now Reyes put her in solitary. She sees the levels. She wants to test Danny's blood. So Danny just sort of goes along with it, and then she's like all smiles the next day. They're missing some character development here as to why she flipped from wanting to jump off the tower to going along with everything and wanting to try to fit in, because then you get this great bonding scene with the lie detector test.
Let's talk about this lie detector scene and why it works for all of the right reasons. They go into an attic. They hook themselves up to a lie detector machine, and they start asking each other questions about their past. And what's phenomenal about this is not only does it give us creatively some more backstory on the characters, but you can see where they're starting to trust each other. And now, in certain circumstances, they're starting to also take sympathy on each other, because this is where the bonding of the 5 of them really starts to pull ahead.
And this is where I feel like you can really feel the hack job done to this movie.
Yeah.
Because it would have been nice to have this scene a bit earlier to develop these characters and start the bond with a few more of these nightmares peppered in as they're getting closer. Instead, we've established the nightmares with one of the characters, And now we're going to start to see it unfold some more. And it just feels kind of janky the way it all starts to unfold, especially because this is also where I go back to Dani kind of flipping on a dime.
Yeah.
After she had her blood drawn. And then, you know, she's like practically skipping after this. It would have made sense for the personality change to come after this bonding moment with them when she starts to feel like, okay, I'm not alone in this. Then it would have accounted for her to start being happy, as opposed to she's only had Rain extend the olive branch so far.
And to your point, I'm wondering if in the original cut of the film, if that's what happened. I'm wondering if this scene came earlier, because it's a great scene, but it feels like something that should have happened 10 minutes earlier.
Yeah, but not immediately. You still needed butting heads. What's also sort of disorienting about it is that I had sort of gotten the impression that the rest of them had been there a lot longer, and Dani was kind of the new girl. But you also have scenes that are coming after this where Sam and Berto start to bond when they're like washing dishes. So like, if anything, I feel like you could have cut that, because they could have been established as like maybe they were the first two in.
Right.
And they're kind of, you know, taking this leadership role to navigate the younger ones through it. And like, I would have bought that. You could have had all of that with very little explanation. And that's where, you know, discovering in this scene that they've all kind of just gotten there. They don't really, none of them have deep-rooted friendships with each other.
Right.
That's why it feels like this is too late. However, I will say the only thing that sort of feels worth holding it is that there is nowhere for them to be safe that they're not being monitored. And because it's revealed that where they think is their safe haven, Reyes is still watching them in here too.
Right. And as she's watching them, she's watching as she is starting to lose control. The observing goes from doing so medically to almost becoming obsessive. And her house of cards starts to fall. It's where she as a character turns, where they are clearly not trusting her. So she, at the same token, is no longer acting like their caring physician.
Yes, and this is where I also started to question, do you really have supervisors that you're reporting to, or have you gone rogue and this is all your own your own experiment, really?
Right. Now we start getting these flashbacks. I mean, we've already had one, but let's just talk about all of them. Let's just flesh all of them out. These flashbacks are absolutely brutal to see. I think the visuals of them, I think that definitely leans into the horror. I think it works for what Marvel was attempting to do with taking its first step into horror. I think in moments here, and listen, it's a totally different director, especially with Sam Raimi. You know, you watch The Evil Dead, it's horror, but it's campy horror. So what they do in Multiverse of Madness is not the same kind of horror that you get here.
Mm-hmm.
But I think certainly in terms of horror elements, these flashbacks are scarier, but they're also far more unsettling.
I also like the reveals. Like, in particular, probably my favorite nightmare was Berto's, because you have the scene in the pool, and albeit the writing is terrible because, you know, Ilyana is swimming around and she tells him to turn the lights off and he's like, ooh, scary. And then she goes, are you scared? And I'm like, well, geez, that takes me right out of it. But, you know, they start making out. It's kind of a sexy scene. And this is where, again, I was like, they were really trying to go for teen horror here, because that's such a trope in any Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Halloween. It's always that the teenagers aren't watching the younger kids, or they're just not paying attention because they're participating in teenage activities and they get punished for it. You know, like there's a whole, you know, religious symbolism of you're not pure, so you die.
Nobody listened to Jamie Kennedy. Nobody listened to him.
Exactly.
Nobody follows
oh my God,
the rules.
How did I not even include Scream in that list? But anyway, I like that we still got this scene and they were able to make it like as PG-13 as possible, because this was the biggest reveal. You could not have cut this out.
Right.
Because now you realize what's happening to them and that they're seeing things, because it is revealed that it's not, in fact, Ileana in the pool. She is up in her room, and this is Berto living out his nightmare of hurting his girlfriend.
Right. Because he says, I can't get too hot, I'll burn you. And that's exactly what happens. It sets the girl on fire. Her flaming body starts walking towards him. It is a brutal watch in all of the right ways. I think in all the ways you want it to be brutal. You and I have a different stance on the special effects here. I thought it was pretty good.
This, I think, is the worst one in this movie, but if you compare it to, we've lambasted CGI on this podcast before. It's not the most egregious CGI I've ever seen. It's just weak, the weakest one in this movie.
Let's talk about the flashback for Sam. He's basically in the coal mine, and he watches it collapse. He watches it kill his father and tens of dozens of his father's coworkers. And just the pure horror, the fear, the sadness in his eyes. It's a spectacular scene.
It really, really is. There's not enough money in the world that could ever get me to do that job, to go into the earth. I would be terrified of a collapse all the time. But that's also, we've seen him try to hone his power before. He knows what his power is, and he's got like this super speed, and that's how he was able to get himself out of it. And he's clearly battling survivor's guilt.
Right.
Really, all of them are. It's not just Danny. When you think about what Berto's been through, because he's so tormented by the fact that he hurt his girlfriend. Like, really, all of them are dealing with that.
Right.
Except for Rain, because she had, her situation was very different.
Yeah, we saw and talked about Ileana's flashback earlier, but let's talk about Rain's. I think for Rain, it obviously was a traumatizing experience for her. She's a very interesting character, and you start to see that really get fleshed out, I think, in her flashback, because the priest brands her with the W, brands her as a witch, because she can shapeshift into a wolf. She kills the priest to escape the strict Catholic village that she lives in, but she's so deep-rooted in her faith at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that whole thing is just a character study, and I think it makes her such a more interesting character. I know that this was a big leap for Marvel, especially with the inclusion in having her in a relationship with Danny, which is all well and good, but I think the most intriguing character in this film fell victim to being on the cutting room floor, because I feel like there's so much more with Rain that we never got to see. Agreed,
because we do see her go to confession. We see her really take refuge in the chapel and pray, demons can't come in here, demons can't come in here.
Yeah.
But because she is such a conflicted character, it also would have been nice to see what her relationship with Danny did mean for her as far as her religion goes.
Right. Now, talking about Ileana, as I mentioned just a moment ago, we've already discussed her flashback, but let's discuss for a second, as this character is more and more fleshed out, we see her vulnerability. She very much is vulnerable. The fact that she and Lockheed, because she can transport interdimensionally, she goes to limbo for comfort. Like, I don't think it took the second viewing for that to really sink in. Limbo is not a place that you want to be in. Ask the Maitlands. Like, this is it's incredible, and again, it's such smart writing, because it's one quick line, but when you mentally let it sink in and you think about it, the fact that that's where she goes to be safe and to be calm is wildly unsettling.
She was also the perfect character to channel flashback into reality. When you start to filter in her nightmares into the facility, and then they all begin to realize that the nightmares are now real because of what Danny is doing, feeding her power.
Right. While all of this is happening, you have Reyes in communication with her superiors, and we finally learn that her superiors are the Exis Corporation, which was Mr. Sinister, who was a villain of the X-Men. So, it's very clear, I believe, that there was a path here, because this was supposed to be a trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
That this was a way of introducing Mr. Sinister. I think that they were planning on going all in, putting all the chips on the table. I think X-Men was supposed to be a next crucial, massive phase of the MCU, but because of all of the reasons that we discussed a little while ago as to why this film fell into, not really development hell, but why it was just buried and pushed and hacked. Obviously, we never got there. We may never get there, certainly not with this franchise. But the fact that that was the direct tie-in and they were ordering Reyes to exterminate Danny,
right,
shows just how powerful Danny was.
Especially because in that scene too, as Reyes is putting her under with intent to put her down, because she does say that, you know, she comes from a family of vets,
right,
and they had to put the family dog down, which is terrible. You do have Danny flash to her childhood, and we see the facility from Logan. It's actually the footage from Logan, which, you know, now in hindsight, they came out, or they should have come out the same year, because Logan was 2017. So to your point, they really were trying to pass that baton to the next generation for X-Men.
So as we're getting towards the conclusion here, Danny is put under. She's not obviously put to sleep all of the way. You have the smiley faces from Ileana's flashbacks, but they're not actual flashbacks. They are there in the hospital. In 2 viewings, I'm not really sure how or why they got there. I think that something ended up on the cutting room floor. I know that Ileana has come in and out of limbo a couple of times, but I don't recall, unless it's completely unclear, which a lot of things in this film tend to be, if she left a portal open, why her smiley face visions are attacking the others. I don't know why that's happening, but that's what the rest of them are dealing with, while Reyes is putting Danny under and Rain is trying to get to Danny.
I don't think it's that. I think it's all because of Danny, because all of them started experiencing their nightmares once Danny got there. And anytime Reyes has been doing something to her where she's weakened, she doesn't know what her power is. So she doesn't have control over it. And because these are their demons, they are feeding the bear. Now, without Danny keeping her bear in check, the bear comes in, he's running rampant, so all of the other nightmares are feeding into him. It's sort of a leap to connect those dots, but I think that's the intent more than the nightmares physically traveling through portals.
So Rain transforms into a wolf. She claws up Reyes. Claws her up very badly. I mean, had Reyes not been eaten by the bear, which happens in a moment or two, she would have just bled out, frankly.
Yeah.
She's lost a lot of blood. How do you feel about the bear devouring her? I mean, it's a pretty great, brutal scene in terms of something scary and something awful. And again, let's repeat ourselves, because a lot got cut out. It feels like this was just an abrupt ending.
I agree. My guess would be that this battle was a lot more gory and Disney did away with a lot of it because it feels like, well, we know that Danny is out for the count because she's been put under. They're
Right.
losing her. Rain is trying to call her back, and she's flashing back to the final moments with her dad. And this whole movie, she's been, or her whole journey, I should say, she's been wanting to get back to her family. So nothing is really stopping her from just, completely going along with this hallucination that she's having.
Yeah.
And just kind of disappearing into it. As a result, without her, and what I'm assuming is a lot of gore on the part of Sam and Birdo, it really feels like Ileana is doing all the heavy lifting here as far as fighting off this bear. Because the two of them, they're not really out for the count. They're just kind of watching her hold it down. And finally, after Rain realizes that she might not be able to pull Danny back, she transforms, claws the bear's eyes out. And finally, it's ultimately Danny that ends up regaining control and realizing what she needs to do, and that she's the only one who can fight this bear, and it's more of an internal struggle than external. But it really feels like they hung Ileana out to dry in this battle. So finally, when they take the bear down, to your point, it does feel kind of abrupt, but they do sort of acknowledge what happens to Reyes. I mean, we see the bear eat her, but I don't know if you caught this. Roberto pulls a shoe out of the rubble.
Yeah.
And he pours
The blood.
like a bucket of blood out of this shoe. So that's kind of the punctuation mark on Reyes' story. And we obviously get the confirmation that she's gone 3 ways to Sunday. But like, it feels like it's a smash cut to him finding that shoe almost.
Yeah, I think that it's a very strong ending for Danny, but I think it's also a very strong ending for the film in totality, because it is that Native American lore of harnessing the bear, and she doesn't kill it, she harnesses it. And that's, I think, very important with that one with the nature, respect the animals, respect the nature, all that. This is, in reality, from the start to the finish, an incredibly full and complete, concise, consistent story. I really think that it is just a victim of circumstance.
I'm not sure that I agree with the word concise, because I feel like there were a lot of instances where we had to reach to connect storylines, but I will say it does feel like it was tied up in a bow because they brought the bear back around fully. And I actually really like how they did that with the opening voiceover, where she started setting up the story of everyone has two bears, but held the ending of it becomes a question of which one you feed. So it does feel complete, which is more than I was expecting.
With it being a film in the MCU, with it having connections to the X-Men, in theory, there should be some things that stand out to us. Where in the Film is brought to you by our friends at Where in the Park, a seek-and-find card game that you can play in your favorite parks, whether it's Disney or Universal, SeaWorld, or more. Where in the Park challenges you to spot those little details that so many can miss. To order your game packs, visit monoreelradio.com and click our affiliate link for a 10% discount today. My Where in the Film's kind of weak, because I'm not even sure that it's really what it's supposed to be.
It was hard to find things in this film.
Because so many things, I think, were cut out because they knew that this was not going to lead anywhere.
Exactly.
I think they intentionally eliminated callbacks. I think that they eliminated Easter eggs because they just wanted this to be a one and done. There's at one point in the background, and I know that at one point when they're screwing around, they're in a wheelchair. There's at one point that there's a wheelchair sort of ominously placed in the background of a room. It makes no sense for it to be there. I felt like that was a nod to Charles Xavier. I can't say that it was his. That was sort of what I was thinking. Maybe it was just there, and it was there for them to mess around with later, but it seems like a really weird thing that they would just be messing with a wheelchair for no reason in a bonding scene.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best I got. And I'm disappointed in it, but it's the best I've got.
Mine was they're watching a show on television and it's Buffy. And I was hoping maybe like there was a connection to like Joss Whedon or something, and he maybe had something to do with this, or there was maybe like a parallel to a storyline, but I'm thinking that's something that ended up on the cutting room floor because there's really no connection to it.
Yeah. Sorry, we're in the park. We'll try to do better next week. Let's talk about what I think we are both going to agree on as being the strongest part of this film, and that's the cast.
Heck yeah.
Maisie Williams plays Rain Sinclair. I said it before. I think that, she was phenomenal. I think she's probably the most interesting character in the film that we don't get to see enough of.
I would agree. I think they probably hacked her storyline apart the most, and that's what I wanted to see the most. We are not Game of Thrones people. We have never watched. It's been on the list forever. So I'm not familiar with her body of work as far as that show goes. That's really what put her on the map, right?
Yeah.
But it makes a strong, like, I would want to watch that more for her now because she was just so great in this.
Blue Hunt plays Danny Moonstar. I thought she really was strong enough to carry the entire film. Like, as an ensemble, they're amazing, but I thought that she was interesting enough. I thought that she was mentally strong enough. I felt that she was conflicted enough where she, as a leading lady, could have carried the film without an ensemble cast around her.
She could have carried 3 films. That's what I was thinking. The biggest shame of them not doing a trilogy out of this is because I feel like she was just getting started and she hasn't done a lot of work since. So I would have really liked to see her blow up over the course of 3 films.
You've got Anya Taylor-Joy as Ileana, a Golden Globe award-winning actress, and it shows. I would have thought that she was, European. She's from Miami. Ultra talented. She was, as I said before, she was strong. She was mean. She's vulnerable. She's innocent. She's confusing. She carried the emotional weight. All of the emotional weight on this film, no offense to Danny, I think all of the emotional weight on this film fell on this character.
I would agree. She's a phenomenal actress. I remember when The Menu came out, which is just an incredible movie. Don't watch with your children, but it's great to check out. If you like her as an actress, definitely watch that. But I remember all of the buzz surrounding that movie when it came out, and I didn't really know where she was from. And I figured it was probably just like from a TV series or something that we had not got to see. But I think a lot of this is what helped launch her career. And she's incredible in this. She towed that line between bully and villain perfectly because, I said it before, you really needed to give her more than just bully characteristics to torment Danny. And that really worked here because she also has to be the distraction from realizing that Reyes is the real villain. So you think that she's going to be the main antagonist, and obviously she's not.
Henry Zaga plays Roberto. This character, maybe it's because he can harness solar energy and burst into flame. He reminded me so much of Chris Evans in Fantastic Four, where he's not only the pretty boy, but he's also sarcastic and carries a lot of the comedy. I think that as conflicted as he is, I think as tormented as he is because he killed his girlfriend, I feel like he was supposed to be a lot more comic relief here. And I think that What happened to it? It's on the floor. I'm done with saying it. We lost something in the character. I liked him. He was really good. I really liked him as a part of the ensemble, but something felt missing here.
I would agree, because it wasn't until the second time that I watched it that I was like, okay, he's always the one like washing dishes and he's kind of being a loner, which I feel like you get a lot from Sam, but you're not really paying attention to how much Roberto is introverted because of what he's been through. And it wasn't until I watched it the second time that I was like, oh, he's like really hurting. And I think what starts to happen is he gets written off as sort of a cocky character who's not really interested in everyone else as a result. But there's a lot deeper meaning there because he's still very much hurting over what he's done, and he can't get close to people.
Right. Charlie Heaton plays Sam. Everybody knows him from Stranger Things. And you know what? He's great in Stranger Things. I honestly think he's better in this.
I thought his accent was terrible. I thought the southern redneck that he was trying to pull off really did a disservice to the character, because he made him sound dumb. I hate to say it, but like that took me out of it more than anything else. Because he's so great in Stranger Things. But here I was like, I miss you as the silent still waters run deep character.
No, I thought he brought an aw shucks to this that... No, I disagree. Full stop on that one. Let's talk about Alice Braga as Cecilia Reyes. She's great. She's so good because you know not to trust anybody in a Marvel film. You know not to trust anybody in a horror film. But because she is herself a mutant, you truthfully believe that she is trying to help these kids, that she is trying to help them harness the energy. You start to think that maybe these nightmares that are coming, that's where the horror is going to come from, and to an extent it does. And to an extent, the tragedy of their lives serves as a horror. But she's so self-righteous in everything that she does, and she's so unhinged in a quiet way. To me, these are the scariest characters. Not the manic ones, not the ones who scream, the silent ones. I thought she was excellent.
I thought she was really great. I didn't trust her from the jump, but I liked that there were a few moments where the character seemed to fully redeem herself. I would have liked a few more scenes, though, where she's interacting one-on-one with more of them, instead of just the Danny scene, because I think that's where the line is clear that you can't trust her, but it would have been nice seeing her try to counsel the rest of them one-on-one. And maybe that's where it's like, oh, but she's so nice to them. Why does she have it out for Danny? Why is she poking and prodding Danny with all of these needles, but everybody else gets like a sit-down conversation with them? And well, Danny does. They do have like one scene on the couch, but it's like Danny's first night there. So, you know, she's just trying to get her settled, get her adjusted. I would have liked to see more like that, but for what little she had to work with, I mean, that's not to say that she didn't have a lot of screen time. She did, but because it was a lot of the same with her just spying on them, she did a lot with that.
Final thoughts on the New Mutants. I'll go first because I can be kind of concise with this. I actually believe this was a good movie that should have been a great movie. And I think in a director's cut, it probably is a great movie. This was a victim to, you know what, not going to say it again, plus a pandemic. I think Disney buried it because it was easy for them to bury it because they weren't happy with the product. I think it's a shame. I'd love to see a director's cut. And I'll go one step further, and they'll never do it, although Disney at this point is not afraid to put out a box office bomb in the making because they're doing it with Snow White. I want to see another one. I want to see another story with these characters. It's never going to happen. If they're not going to do Solo as a sequel, they're not going to do this. I would love to see more of this. I'd love to see more of these characters. I'd love to see more of this cast. I would love to see what they could do with a clear vision and just letting the writer and the director make the film that you paid them to make. That's what I would like to see.
I would agree. And I think that there is still a world that they could potentially pick it up and, sort of address the time jump and what these characters have been up to in the because now that obviously the actors are going to be fully grown. And we talk about people having Marvel fatigue all the time, but I feel like instead of jamming trilogies down our throats, like you could have let everything else breathe for a while and then picked up this thread. And I think it's something, I think there's a market for it. I think people would have wanted it because you left it alone for a while and then came back 5 years later with a better story, or 8 years later from the time that you filmed it. So I feel like it would have been better instead of some of the other sequels that we've gotten, since Endgame, or some of the other new trilogies that they've tried to launch. It would have been nicer to pick this up. But I 1,000% agree. I would love to see a director's cut. I would love to see the world where this was just an out and out horror. I think it would have been great. But with all that being said, it really wasn't as bad as the reputation is. It certainly wasn't a bad movie. It just didn't get its due. But I certainly appreciate it not only for what it is, but for kicking off What the February. This was a very nice way to start, and I am fearful for what you're going to throw at me next week.
Well, you're going to find out in just a few minutes, but we'd love to know what you have to say about the new Mutants. You can let us know on all forums of social media at Monoreel Radio, or you can send us an email, monoreelradio@gmail.com. News of the week is coming up, plus our next film reveal. But first, a quick break.
News of the Week is proudly sponsored by KMV Travel. KMV Travel is a boutique travel agency that helps families plan personalized vacations and create unforgettable memories on land and at sea. If you've dreamed of setting sail on the Disney fleet, KMV Travel will help you from booking to bon voyage. When you connect with a KMV travel specialist, they will not only assist you with your cruise package, but they will also help you with your stateroom selection, pre- and post-cruise accommodations, ground transportation, onboard activity reservations, and port activity reservations. Whether you are traveling as a couple, with a family, or a large group, your KMV travel advisor will help you customize the perfect cruise itinerary for you. Visit KMV Travel to set sail now.
Hey guys, my name is Mike. I listen to Jackie and Sean's podcast every week on my commute into work. So I reached out to Jackie, and she helped me put together the perfect getaway. I did a 4-night Disney cruise ship, and she was able to answer every question that I threw at her. She put together the perfect dates and an insurance plan that made the whole experience stress-free. She was able to help me with little tips and tricks, like you can get a Mickey Mouse bar delivered to you any time of the day. And I think that was a mistake because now I put about 10, 15 pounds on. I'll definitely be using Jackie again in the future. Thanks for everything.
Speaking of Marvel, speaking of franchises that they've had problems getting off the ground in the last 10 years, the new Fantastic Four trailer dropped this week. I've got to be honest with you. Maybe I'm in the minority of people that really liked the first Fantastic Four film with Chris Evans. Maybe it's because I'm starting to lose a little bit of enthusiasm when it comes to a lot of things in the MCU, because other than Deadpool and Wolverine, what they've been putting out more recently, I think, is borderline subpar. Am I going to see this? Yes, because I like the cast. And I like Fantastic Four. I'm not all that excited with this trailer.
Really?
This trailer doesn't get me going.
I thought it looked great. I thought it looked really great. I think part of that though is the excitement for what I already knew was happening, that they're doing this 60s vibes. And I know that's what Fantastic Four is. It's supposed to aesthetically look like the 60s, but it is a futuristic world. So I think for me the excitement comes from, it feels like Tomorrowland almost, which we really like. And it also gives me a little bit of like the first Captain America, where they're at the World's Fair and, you know, when Howard Stark's inventions are on display in real time. So I think that could be really cool just as far as the cinematography and the aesthetic. I'm trying not to go down too many rabbit holes with it because I think that's where a lot of Marvel fatigue comes from, is the anticipation and the buildup and the, you know, people guessing what's going to happen. And then if it does happen, it does feel sort of anticlimactic because somebody else put it out there already. What I am hopeful for is that, you know, we know that Reed Richards has the portal. I'm really hoping that if this starts out in the multiverse, that is what ultimately gets used to bring them into 616 so we can get back on one timeline and then we are like done with the multiverse for good. According to Deadpool and Wolverine, it's gone.
I hope so. Tough to Be a Bug is going to be closing at Disney's Animal Kingdom Park on St. Patrick's Day, March 17th. We'll be at Raglan Road, so we will not be at Tough to Be a Bug.
Well,
no.
I am off that day, you know?
I'm going to Raglan Road, and I'm spending my... You can go, take a bus. Take a bus over to a resort, and then a bus over to Animal Kingdom.
Well,
I'm not leaving Raglan Road.
We did have our goodbye with that one already. So I'm kind of because I was thinking that I don't see a world where we make it back over to Animal Kingdom between now and then. So I kind of made my peace with it.
Mm-hmm. We have the date for the Muppet closure over at Disney's Hollywood Studios. That is going to be June 7th, and that is a day that we will be attending a park for a closure.
That one I'm not going to make my peace with, if ever.
Yeah. They also announced the Garden Rocks concert series for the International Flower and Garden Festival. That is going to run from March 5th to June 2nd. A lot of returning favorites, but something that surprised me was seeing Sugar Ray get moved out of Eat to the Beat and into Garden Rocks. Now, admittedly, I didn't pull up their concert schedule, so I didn't look, but I'm sort of guessing on a couple of things here. First thing is, I'm wondering if, in spite of what we want to admit to, that, you know, Garden Rocks was always the quote-unquote older music.
Yeah.
And I think as we're getting closer into our 40s and as our generation is in their 40s, I'm wondering if they're sliding some of our concerts into Garden Rocks and going with more modern contemporary artists. Because you're seeing a lot, like, of more recent, like, American Idol artists and things like that are starting to be sort of put into Eat to the Beat. I think Eat to the Beat has also seen a lot more international reach, which kind of makes sense when it comes to what the whole feeling of that festival is. The other thing I'm wondering is if Eat to the Beat is getting scaled back again. Because we know they didn't do concerts every night. It was the first time in a while they hadn't done it.
And they shortened the festival.
I'm wondering if you're getting more cuts to Eat to the Beat. So they're taking some of the festival favorites and sliding them into Garden Rocks.
No, I think you were onto something earlier because that's what I was thinking. I think it's more of a demographic that they're trying to appeal to at each time of year. Because if you think about it, Garden Rocks is primarily going to be during spring break. So that's when I feel like you would get a lot of like Gen Zers and Gen Alpha coming down, and they're sort of starting to discover that like 90s culture, and it's all like that's their retro now, the way that we discovered our parents' music from the 70s and 80s. So I think that that would have an appeal to spring breakers. and or for our generation, looking to travel, maybe, not with a family, if they're just looking to come down for like a weekend or whatever and see a band. I feel like now towards the end of the year, and this is probably more of what's causing that shift, is because the holidays start so early. You get a lot more families down here in November at the tail end of Food and Wine. And because you also have the races too, you need a little bit of a broader appeal of music for multi-generational families that are going to be traveling for the holidays. So I think that's where you get to see more of those family-friendly bands. And like the perfect example, that's why Lit didn't get to play Food and Wine, and they were part of Garden Rocks. By the way, I didn't see them on the roster. There's still a TBD weekend, and I am holding out hope. However, I am very happy that we finally get Sugar Ray, because they were always on a holiday weekend and we would be blocked out from the parks.
Right.
So the first thing I did, I didn't even ask you, I made us a park reservation for Sugar Ray.
And I was going to be there anyway, because that's the Sunday of Springtime Surprise weekend for Run Disney. So as you pointed out, you have people traveling for these races, put a family-friendly event in. Also, some breaking news. This literally just came through. If you are registered for Springtime Surprise, if you registered for the Springtime Surprise Splash Party after, you're getting a refund. It just got canceled.
No kidding.
Well, my guess, and again, it's a hunch, it makes no sense that you would cancel an event 2 months, literally, almost to the day, 2 months before it's supposed to happen. So it tells me it wasn't selling. I didn't go last year. The reviews from those who went last year were not spectacular. I'm wondering if that reputation led to a very low attendance for this year, and the attendance never took off. I just find it interesting that you would cancel an event, not because of weather, not because of anything, 2 months before.
Well, we know that this race is not sold out. So the positive side of it, this could make a really strong case for the return of Star Wars weekend.
But why don't we surprise you right now?
I was trying to tee you up before, and you didn't take the bait. You made me wait.
I made you wait. I told you, things are going to get worse before they get better. And it is What the February.
I don't think they're going to get better.
This is a film that we have kicked around for years and years and years. And whether it be a What the February or whether it be Halloween, there were always films that pushed it out. There is nothing standing in the way of this film that stars a Hollywood legend, specifically a horror legend, and a thriller legend, which kind of eases us in to this film coming out of what was supposed to be Marvel's first delve into horror. And I am talking about the 1999 DCOM, Can of Worms. That is going to be the next film for What the February.
I should have known. I should have known this was coming.
Thank you all so much for joining us this and every week on Monoreel Radio. Monoreel Radio will always be free, but there are many ways that you can help support the show. Please give us a rating wherever you listen to your podcast. Join the conversation on social media at Monoreel Radio on all major platforms. Share your favorite episodes with family and friends who may enjoy them. And of course, book your next trip with Jackie. Links to everything can be found at monoreelradio.com. We all get one story. Make yours a magical one.
On behalf of Monoreel Radio, we'd like to thank you for joining us. We'll see you at the movies, the stuff dreams are made of.